If I was starting a business, these are all the things I would want to know so I had the best chance of having the most successful business. This podcast today is all about my 5 tips, things that you should do to be a successful business owner so that you don't waste your time, your money, and you have the best chance to be a winner in your business. If we're not growing, you're not growing. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today I want to explore all things business podcast. But if you're new to the channel and you haven't seen us before, my name is Nathan Rigney. I am the Profit Generator and I am the owner of NGR Accounting, an accounting practice in the Sutherland Shire. I am all about business. I am not your typical accountant. I just love business. So today's podcast is all about 5 tips that I've got so that you can start your business and that you have a better chance of being successful. Did you know that the reality is that about 14% in the 24 year, businesses out there, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, actually ceased. They ceased because they just could not continue to succeed because of financial pressures, not understanding business, but then also they went broke. And a combination of reasons that saw them in a position where they started a business and then after operating it from around about an average of 3 to 5 years, had nothing to show. So if you take anything away from today, listen purely about just that business is hard, but it doesn't need to be as hard if you do the research and get all the knowledge so that you have a better chance of winning. My 5 steps for success. So step 1. This one here is the most vital and most important, and it's a question you need to ask yourself deep down. Are you actually ready to be a business owner? And what I mean by that is that it is about more than just the dream. It's about more than just the things you've heard about being a business owner. And you know what? For a lot of people, when they start a business, they're taking the skill they had whilst they were an employee and then are operating their own business in their own right, under an ABN, under a company, a sole trader, whatever it looks like. But what no one ever tells you is that when you're an employee and your main goal is, if you're a hairdresser, you cut hair. Like when I was an employee, I was an accountant. I did tax returns all day. I did financial statements. Basically what I did is I produced a result and then gave invoices to clients. So then the business could take that money, pay off, use it for different parts of the business, and the owner made a profit from what I was doing. But the reality is that when you go to operate a business and you go from this position where you were doing stuff as an employee and you want to then do the same in your own business, now you're doing that same stuff, especially if you're starting from scratch, but then also you now have to worry about all these other different things, all these other different areas of running a business that you never had to worry about before. The reality is you never had to worry about marketing. You never had to worry about when the next lead was coming in, where the next sale was coming from. You never had to worry about the legal aspects of what you might do. You didn't have to worry about accounting. You didn't have to worry about all these things, all these functions of the business. And these different functions of a business like accounting, marketing, legal, HR, these are the pillars that actually hold up the business. So if you think about a table, we've got 4 legs, and really the tabletop is the service of the product. But without the 4 legs being the accounting, the marketing, the legal, the human resources, or even other aspects of running a business, it would just flop. But beyond even just understanding having those 4 areas, which you didn't have before, now you've also got on top of that, you've got to really understand about your mindset and psychology. And what I mean by that is that you need to really work out, hey, now that I'm operating a business, what are my personal pros and cons? Understanding what you're really good at, but then what you're not so good at, and what's going to hold you back, and then what's going to excel you. And when you understand more about yourself, you can become a better business owner. But then also putting those 2 things together, it's really vital that you have a good understanding about yourself and always willing to learn. And like I've always said, is that it's like a pot plant. If you don't water a plant, it doesn't grow. And it's the same with your mind being a business owner. You need to grow and learn to become a better business owner and to become more than just the transaction of selling the product or service that you're offering. So whilst we're talking about those 4 pillars. You don't have to completely understand how to be an accountant. You have to understand marketing. You need to have a good understanding of it and at least be able to identify. And maybe to start with, you might do parts of it yourself, but then you might sort out other professionals that can help you look after those different aspects of running a business. So really, it's about the psychology and also understanding. The first step is really you working out whether you're going to take that on board and you're going to want to learn and do more than just offering the product or service. Okay, so tip 2. My second tip is this. Are you going to be the lone wolf or you're going to be the wolf that's got a pack? What I mean by that is, by the lone wolf is, do you want to be a business owner that really has just gone from being an employee to having an ABN and still doing a lot of the work like you did as an employee, but you're not really worrying about having staff and then worrying about all the other different functions I talked about in a business? There might be a little bit of it, but primarily you want to do all the work and you just really want more of the freedom of running your own race. And that's fine if that's what you want to be. I call that a transactional business. So a transactional business is one where, you know what, you're doing all the work, you're taking the risk. But it also means that with that type of business, when you're not working, you're not earning money. So if you're sick, you can't earn money. If you're going on holidays, you can't really earn money because you haven't got people doing their things for you. But like I said, depending on where you are in your life, this might work out really well for you. You might be a contractor or you might just run your own business. And it's just about you're doing the work yourself. There's no real growth mindset, but you're earning a little bit more than you would as an employee and you're in charge of your own destiny. But if you want to be beyond just that lone wolf and you want to be the leader of the pack, the mindset's completely different and it's more of a growth mindset and not so much a transactional sell, it's all my own time to get a result. And really, to be the leader of a business and have a business mentality or a growth mindset, it's about more than just earning a salary or a keep or a wage, a piece of money to keep you going each week. The bigger picture is really about having people, systems, processes, and having a business that operates and makes money when you're not there. So in that style of business, when you go away for a week or you're sick, the business continues to operate and continues to make money. And see, what you're making money off is all of your risk, knowledge, and time that you put into building really good systems and really good people to then go and do the selling of the product or the service that you're providing. So my third tip is you've got to treat your business just like any other investment. In fact, it's the biggest investment next to the house that you're ever going to buy. And the reality is the reason you need to treat it like any other investment or even more with so much more regard is because there is so much risk in operating a business. And before you commit all your time, maybe your money, sweat equity, whatever you want to call it, you really want to understand before you start your business or you even go and buy a business, what you're investing your money and your time into. So like any investment, every investment comes with a degree of risk. And the risk is different depending on what you're doing. And it's the same with business, depending on what you're doing in business. Now, if you're starting a business in, say for example, if I started a cafe, I don't know anything about cafes. And there'd be a lot more risk there for me, but someone who has been a barista or has been a chef, starting a cafe would be a whole lot less risky for them. But what you need to do is you need to understand everything from like, when I start this business, who am I serving? Who is my customer? What is the product? What is the service that I'm providing? If I'm opening up a cafe and there's already 5 coffee shops in the one street and I'm going to be number 6 cafe in that street, tell me, what are you doing different than every other cafe? How are you going to stand out? You're just going to be another cafe that's offering coffee and you're trying to compete against other cafes that have been well established and have a loyal customer base. But maybe if you do feel strongly about your cafe, you might look at it and go, well, I'm going to do some market analysis. I'm going to do some research. And maybe all the coffee there is horrible. Or maybe there's a gap for a cafe down that area where maybe there's no cafes who just specialize in teas around the world. Or maybe there's a special, like a drink that's different, but what is your product differentiation? And when you're investing your money into a business or your time, there's a whole lot of risk. Like when you start a business, especially you talk about a physical premises, there's a whole lot of costs as well. If you're going to invest a whole lot of money into a fit out, you're going to commit yourself to a lease. Generally speaking, it's 3 or 5 years that you're saying, I'm going to pay that rent for that period of time. So you really want to make sure that whatever you're trying to sell, you need to basically sell a whole lot of those products or services. You need to make sure it's going to sell so that the commitment and the risk that you've put in repaying back the fit out, plus those committed expenses like your rent, are covered. Because otherwise, if you go into business and you haven't done the research and you've spent all that money and time and then no one comes to you, all that money is going to disappear and go away. So with clients, when we start talking about the business idea, there are 3 things that I go over. I like talking about the market demand of the product, talking about the value proposition and how the product or the service is different. And is the product or service you're doing, is it profitable? The next thing that I always think that every business owner should do, whilst you're in business or even before you definitely start, you want to do a SWOT analysis. So a SWOT analysis is looking at the external factors like the strengths and what are the threats? What are the strengths and the threats of this business idea, this concept? And then the opportunities. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Do an analysis, have a look at the external and internal factors that are going to potentially excel you, but then also hold you back and pull you back. So my final word on treating your business like any other investment and looking at the risk is you've got to do your due diligence. I know that's an accounting term. You've got to do so much research, and really what you want to do is you want to get a firm idea on everything before you even worry about investing a single dollar of your money. So step 4 is all about the pressure test. And what I mean by that is I want you to remove all the emotional ties of operating your business. So that means basically getting maybe an accountant, a business coach, a friend, or someone who's in the same business that you're thinking about opening to go through and explore all the foundations of what you've discovered so far. So all your research, all your due diligence, and basically to ask you the questions that maybe you haven't thought of, or maybe you should be thinking of, and then you also have to provide the answer. And it's not about being right or wrong. It's about really getting down to, do I need to change what I'm doing? Do I need to change the concept? Or maybe I need to scrap the idea altogether again and start from scratch. But what you do want to do is you want to go through this process so that you have the best chance of being successful. And sometimes business ideas, they're not so great. Maybe it's about timing as well. There's been so many people, entrepreneurs out there who have started a business, an idea, a concept, and it's been the same idea, but there was this one person who has been the winner out of that same concept, all because of the right amount of time or the time that it was released to market. So sometimes it can be a little bit of luck, but then also it's understanding what is you're entering and having those hard-hitting questions. And really, you should be ready with all your research as to, why work and why it won't work. But it's so important to step back and remove the emotion that you have in this business before you start. A really good example of that is a story I want to share from my own personal life. My wife is in the childcare industry and she started her career in teaching and she's got a real good passion for it. And around about 7 years, just before our son Cooper was born, we looked at buying a childcare centre. And it just so happens that this childcare centre, after doing all our research together, all our due diligence, that we found that this business, fees being undervalued and a whole mix of different things, that basically this business had on it in the lease a construction clause in it. And so what that construction clause basically said is that at any point in time, the lease can end with not much notice and you could be kicked out of the premises. Now, the reality is with a childcare centre, you just can't pick up a childcare centre and move it to another location without too much expense. There's a lot of expense just to move a childcare centre. You need to think about the fit out. You need to think about getting a lease where you are approved to operate a childcare centre from said location. So to have a look at it, what we had to do is, looking at that example, we had to remove that emotion and say, you know what, because of this demolition clause that at any point in time the building could get knocked down, that we're not going to invest in this business because there's a lot of risk that after a few years that all our hard work could be thrown away and we couldn't sell the business. And the reality is, where it gets a little bit bittersweet is that only recently that business that we didn't buy has just been told that they have to vacate the premises, they have to leave, and their business can't be sold to anyone. So they've spent all that time building that business up and there's nothing to show at the end. So it's really important that you want to get a really good understanding that the time and the risk of your money and equity, your time, equity, all that sort of stuff is going to be put, that you have the best chance of getting a return. You want to basically look at all that risk and you want to assess that you're going to, after everything you do, before you even start, that you have the best chance of getting a return on the investment, the money that you're risking. You're going to get a return on your equity, your time, because if you're not going to get that, you need to go back to the drawing board and work out how you can. So my fifth step, it's actually what most accountants would start with. Most accountants, I think, when they talk about starting a business, they talk about the structure, talking about whether you should be a sole trader, a company, or a trust. It's the last thing that you need to worry about. But when you get to the end and you know that you have a solid business foundation, it's at that point now you can start talking about what structure you're going to use. Are you going to be a company? And then thinking about all the other different things that you need to as far as a compliance point of view. So that might be including reaching out to a solicitor to look at contracts that you're going to sign. That could be anything from your lease to a license agreement for a product or service that you might be selling. It could be also looking at what accounting software you need, what I need to do there, what I need to understand about hiring employees. I'm going to need someone to start with me, right? What do I need to know about HR? So getting all that compliance sort of stuff and think about anything that's like a legal requirement is the fifth step. And it's only till you've succeeded at looking at my first 4 steps that you then worry about the fifth step. Because there's no point starting with that and investing a whole lot of money in setting up a structure and then going into almost what I would say, if you do it round back to front, you go tip 5 to tip 1, it's almost like saying, hey, you're putting a blindfold on your eyes and you're just guessing it the whole way. And if you want to do that and you want to gamble away, but you're gambling away good money and good time, and the last thing you want to do is spend 5 or 6 years operating a business and be one of those 14% that I talked about at the start of the video, where you've operated your business that whole time and there's nothing to show and you've walked away with nothing extra. So they are my 5 tips. My call to you is that if you're thinking about starting a business, how are you going to do it different that, the rest of the people out there who failed at business? What research are you going to do? Are you going to be willing and open to actually explore a bit? I actually have a Profit Generator program where we teach a lot of stuff about this. And what I would suggest as well, one-to-one coaching is one thing that I do with business owners beyond just the compliance of tax returns. And if that's something you're interested in doing, and I'd say that if you're interested in operating a business, that's something that you really need to do. So think about your business, and then part of your setup costs should be really seeking out time with someone like myself, like an accountant or a business coach, someone who's certified and actually understands business concepts and also the legalities of running a business to help you become the most successful business owner you can, so that when you're starting a business, you are more informed on the money that you're risking before you risk it, before you start the business. If you know someone who's starting a business, share this content with them, because it might actually save them from wasting a whole lot of money and their time and being the next successful business owner out there. My name is Nathan Rigney, I'm the Profit Generator, and thank you for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you next time.